this week, the name on the marquee has got to be Alexander Volkov, who this past Saturday night at the UFC Apex for UFC Fight Night, Volkov versus Rozenstruik defeated Jairzinho Biggie Boy Rozenstruik by TKO at 2 minutes and 12 seconds of round number 1. Mark, I've spoken enough. Take it from here. What was your assessment of the fight overall, of Volkov's performance, and of that stoppage?
Well, that didn't play out quite the way anyone expected it to, did it? I would imagine the odds on Volkov by KO in round 1 were pretty high. But to get the stoppage out of the way, I honestly didn't have much of a problem with it. Like, yes, it gets stopped, and then Rozenstruik kind of starts running away right afterward, almost like he's ready to reset, like he's shaking it off. So naturally, when you see that, your mind is kind of like, oh, maybe it shouldn't have got stopped. But, like, Herb doesn't know that's what's going to happen. He's watching this man eating big shots. He had his balance taken away like 2-3 different times in that instance. And I don't think it's a bad stoppage. Is it the most obvious stoppage that ever happened? No, but I really didn't have a problem with it. Like, even when it happened, I was like, oh, yeah, like I thought it was about to stop. And then you see him run, and it's like, but, you know, you got to make a call in the moment. I'm sure Omar will have a take being the future ref that he plans to be. Nice. But it did not bother me. I think he just got stuck in a bad spot and couldn't really get out quick enough, and unfortunately ate too many shots. But as for Volkov, that was a big-time I'm still here performance. Like, that was exactly what he needed to do at this stage of his career to keep himself in a place where he's going to be getting big fights. To go out there and finish that in one like that, that really kept him, you know, holding his status that he's at right now. And I thought he looked good. He was working the low kicks. When Rozenstruik flurried, Volkov stayed in the fire right with him. He got caught, but he bit down. He went for it, and he got it, man. He did what only Francis Ngannou had previously done and finished Jairzinho Rozenstruik. So it's a good look for him and a big win.
Definitely is. I definitely have seen worse early stoppages. This one was kind of like, well.
Yeah, that's like, well, you should have got out of there.
Like the moment that Herb stepped in is when Rozenstruik kind of popped back up, and you're like,
right.
But I've seen worse once, and I'm just kind of like shrugging. I'm like, kind of sucks for Rozenstruik. But like you said, he should have got out of there sooner. Omar, let's bring you in here. What were your impressions of Volkov's performance overall, of the fight overall, and what was your take on the stoppage?
So the night that this happened, I fell asleep.
I
did not watch it
live either.
I didn't watch this live. And so I woke up the next morning and I see that Volkov wins by TKO in round 1. And I'm like, what fucking world am I living in right now? So I look up, and then all of a sudden it's, controversial stoppage. Herb Dean fucks up again, and all this other stuff, and I'm like, oh no, Herb Dean's at it again. But when I watched the fight, I really wasn't mad at this stoppage. And I was thinking to myself, like, if this was me and Herb Dean's situation and I saw this happen, would I have stopped the fight? And I can't tell you I would have stopped the fight, but I wouldn't be mad at another referee who would have stopped the fight in that moment. The sequence when it started off, the left hand that started off that whole sequence was bad. Like, that threw Jairzinho back. Jairzinho's legs kind of went out from under him, and that was kind of where he lost balance along the cage. And then he just kept getting pieced up. We've seen this before where, a lot of people have the expectation, this like gladiator expectation, where Jairzinho's not supposed to be stopped until he's dead. So he's basically out cold on the mat. And you've heard referees, not just Herb Dean, talk about, we're looking to see kind of where the progression of the fight is going. And if we don't see the fights changing in any way, we're not going to sit there and let the fighter take unnecessary damage. Different referees seem to have a different take on exactly what that line is. But I wasn't mad at Herb Dean stopping the fight in that moment. I mean, Jairzinho wasn't really defending himself very well. He just kept going down on the ground. There's nothing to say that him turning his back the way that he kind of did to try to get out the corner would have worked, because Volkov was all over his ass the entire time. I did think that as soon as it was over, though, that I knew it was going to be one of these, oh boy, somebody's going to get something as soon as I saw it physically. But yeah, I don't think it was as bad a stoppage as I think it's being made out to be. We've seen things like that happen with Jairzinho too, where, you know, a lot like Derek Lewis, where they get hit really well. It's hard for these guys to recover, especially at heavyweight in general. And I think that's really what we saw. You know, I don't think it was as bad a stoppage at all.
Anytime you have multiple times where you buckle, you're running the risk that you're not going to get to keep fighting, and that's exactly what it was.
Yeah, and you know, whether or not a stoppage is early or late, you know, good and bad stoppages on the part of referee, to me it reminds me also of the whole judging debate that is kind of always ongoing, and every month or every other month it kind of just resurfaces, and everybody has to react to, you know, and we are doing it as well. React to this or that, early stoppage, late stoppage, how early was it, how late was it? You know, the difference between an early stoppage and a late stoppage is razor thin. It is a matter of sometimes a single blow. And, man, these refs got a tough job, man.
Yeah. Sometimes, though, it's also about perception. You know what I mean? One of the good examples about a referee making the wrong decision based on his own perception is that the first Ian Kuntelaba fight against
Magomed
Ankalaev, where Kuntelaba was doing all of this swaying nonsense and probably trying to bait him in, trying to look like he was hurt or whatever. The referee perceived it a certain way, stopped that fight, and we all looked ridiculous that day. I mean, that was a horrible stoppage. We can understand why he did it, but it wasn't a good stoppage by any stretch of the imagination.
Which ref? So was that Keith Peterson? I want to say my memory is telling me I'm picturing Peterson. No,
I don't.
That was some random guy, some relatively random referee. I don't think he's one of our
I want to look it
top
up.
regular guys.
It's on Sherdog. Was it somebody like a Tagnoni or Taglioni?
No, I think he was one of the Brazilian. I feel like he was one of those Brazilian
guy?
referees.
Let's see.
But yeah, I don't think that was the same in this situation. I honestly think that Jairzinho let himself get put in a bad position.
Kevin McDonald.
Yeah, I don't know who that is.
You know him. He's got like the side part shaved into his head.
Yeah, I think I know what that is. You know what? Serves Kutelaba right, man, for clowning like that. I mean, I don't think he convinced any of the viewers, but he convinced the ref.
Yeah, he convinced the one person he didn't need to convince. I know. He's trying to convince this guy he's fighting that he's all messed up. Come on in. Come get some real quick. And the referee's like, whoa, he looks hurt. Let's stop the fight. It wasn't great. It really wasn't great.
I just sent you guys Kevin McDonald in the chat if you want to see what he looks like.
Let's go. Sure, dog.
Oh, and I'm over here.
You know him, right?
My text messages.
Yeah. He's all right.
Yeah, he's all right.
Does Sherdog have like ratings for the refs?
I have no idea.
Should.
Wow, interesting.
I just clicked on it.
All right, let's talk about where these guys go from here at heavyweight. Mark, let me throw it back over to you. Let's start with the winner, Mr. Volkov. You're the matchmaker for the UFC. What are you going to do with the big Russian?
I think the perfect fight for Volkov is the winner of Derek Lewis and Sergey Pavlovich. There are some very big fights playing out right now at the top of the heavyweight division. I don't think Volkov is quite going to get one of those guys without another win, and I think that matchup is perfect. Either he gets a rematch with Derek Lewis to avenge what's got to be one of the most frustrating losses of his career, or if Pavlovich beats Lewis, then we get a big-time matchup of this new heavyweight stud standing across from Drago. So I think that works either way.
Yeah, man. I like the rematch with Lewis because it's a fight that makes a lot of sense to run back, because up until the moment that Derek Lewis finished him, he was getting schooled. He was getting schooled by Volkov. So I would love to see them run it back.
Yeah, I'm sure he thinks about that one.
Yeah, man. Omar, you have any other names?
As it turns out, Volkov doesn't really give a shit about the Darius Lewis fight.
Really? Why he talked about it?
he did it in some interview where he was saying he'd rather rematch Cyril Gane because that was actually a close competitive fight. Whereas the Derek Lewis one was basically one that he was winning, that he just got caught in, and he's just kind of accepted that was what was happening. But he doesn't feel like he really lost that fight in that sense.
I mean, also,
he got knocked out.
Fight Cyril Gane, considering Cyril Gane is a fight away from the title, and Derek Lewis is on a losing streak.
I'm sure there's a little bit of knowledge to that too. But he was like, he just doesn't feel like the Derek Lewis thing is something that needs to happen. He needs to.
So he feels like he's better than Lewis, even though he went night. Not sure about that.
I mean, pieced them up for a solid 3 rounds.
Doesn't matter.
As far as what's next for him, I kind of do like the Derek Lewis fight, to be honest. I think it makes it super interesting, especially to see if Derek Lewis has learned anything in that time. I don't think Derek Lewis has become a technician by any stretch of the imagination, but it would be interesting to see if this fight is any different than it was the first time. The Cyril Gane one seems like a stretch. It definitely seems like he's trying to work his way up the ladder and skipping a couple steps along the way. So I'd rather him go the Derek Lewis route.
Sticking with you, Omar, what about the loser here in terms of Jairzinho Rozenstruik? You're the matchmaker for the UFC. What are you doing with Biggie Boy right now?
I mean, Rozenstruik has lost to two top guys, but at this point, the heavyweight division is so volatile that it's kind of time for the guys at the bottom are sort of working their way up pretty handily, and he's just going to have to fight, I think, a contender on their way up as well. Somebody like, maybe Marcin Tybura, even Ivanov would be an interesting fight at this point against Rozenstruik. I'd probably rather see Marcin Tybura against Rozenstruik over Ivanov personally, but that would be my pick.
Mark?
I almost said that myself, but instead I decided to get very complicated based off my Volkov matchup. So bear with me here and just go with the loser of that fight. I think it works perfect for Rozenstruik as well. If Lewis is the loser, we get to see Rozenstruik and Lewis, which we've somehow never seen and feels like we should have seen. And if Pavlovich is the loser, then it's like, all right, he couldn't get past Derek Lewis, but let's have him fight lesser Derek Lewis in how I view Rozenstruik and see if he's better than him. So
Totally.
I'm kind of just taking that fight and putting the winner with Volkov and the loser with Rozenstruik.
I like it. All right, gentlemen. Well, congrats to Mr. Volkov for his big I'm Still Here win. And now let's march on.